What's up, y'all? Welcome in, Talkin Dawgs. Might have a light crowd tonight. We're just kind of doing this on the fly. Didn't really keep anybody updated on this or anything like that. It was just kind of last minute deal. Brian not feeling well tonight, so I felt like since we're not doing Thunder and Lightning today, that we could get on here and talk a little bit about Mississippi State basketball or whatever you guys want to talk about. So, because I know they got a big game going up, Brian was kind of upset about that we weren't going to be able to talk about the preview for the Missouri game coming up on Saturday. We had some other things to talk about, so we'll discuss it here for anybody that wants to hang out and talk for a little bit. So, Robbie Faulk here. If you're a first timer, I appreciate you checking in. Subscribe to the channel if you aren't already. We have a lot of good content on here over the last few months or so. I feel like we're starting to gain a little ground and things like that on here. So you guys can check out my videos. We just had a great interview, I thought, with Rylan Godey, the tight end that is transferring from Georgia to Mississippi State. Go check that out if you haven't seen it. Great thoughts from him yesterday on why he chose Mississippi State, the tight end room that he came from at Georgia, which was so talented, getting a chance to play for two and win two national championships, stuff like that. So great interview over there with him. I have some interviews with Mississippi State coaches from yesterday. We talked to every coach on staff yesterday, actually. And I got 3 videos on there. I got Chad Bumpus, David Turner, and Greg Knox, 3 familiar faces for State fans. You can go over there and check that out. And, of course, on our website on 247, we're publishing stories every day on these interviews that we have, a lot of features with these coaches. So you'll be able to read and see some videos on those interviews and kind of hear their thoughts on coming back to Mississippi State or for those who are returning, things like that. So some really good stuff going on here, some great stuff going on our website, 247. So go check it out. And I believe we have a 60% off deal for an annual membership over there at 247. Of course, it's free over here for a subscription just to sign up and get notified when videos drop here. But on our site, where we have a lot of intel going on regarding Mississippi State sports, we have the message board locked down behind the VIP membership. This is a perfect time to jump on board for that because 2024 recruiting is already heating up. We got basketball starting to come down the stretch here. Baseball is about to get started, so you're going to want to be over there. So anyway, I want to remind you guys, this is a live chat open for all. Whoever wants to get in there in the comments and give your thoughts, ask questions, whatever you want to do, drop it in over there. And if it's clean and worthy of talking about, we will talk about it over there. I don't care if it's music, wrestling, football, whatever. So go over there and drop your comments in there if you want to. So let's start off by talking a little bit of basketball. We'll get around to some things, and I'll obviously get into your questions too. But Mississippi State kind of left for dead by a lot of people when they started off the conference schedule 1-7, and you go from 11-0 starting off the season to losing 7 out of 8 ball games, and the one win in there was Ole Miss. But for the people that have followed this team and seen how hard they play, you could see that they were close in a lot of moments. And I think where it really showed was against Tennessee. It started showing a little bit, but on the road at Alabama, you play really good defense there. You make some plays down the stretch to kind of stay in the ball game, and you have a chance in the final possession to tie the game and go to overtime against the number 2 team in the country, and you just can't come through. And that's coupled with a tough loss against Florida by single digits, a single-digit loss to Georgia and Auburn on the road where you had a chance to win those games. You had a really good showing at home against Tennessee. You had a really good showing at home against Alabama. The only blowout, the only game you really haven't been in all year was on the road at Tennessee. So this team's been very close. They just haven't been able to figure things out. And they really kind of crossed over that bridge, I believe, on last Saturday when they took on TCU. Top 15 team. This is a SEC Big 12 Challenge ball game against TCU. And, you lead from the majority of that ball game. It was close in the second half, back and forth, but you go to overtime with TCU, and the way that State handled that overtime, I thought, was crucial for this team this year. They found a way, they won the ball game, and you could see the confidence kind of exuberating out of that team after what they did on Saturday night. So now you go on the road, you face a bad South Carolina team. This team's not good at all. But you took care of business in that game. I thought you basically dominated defensively. South Carolina hit some crazy three-pointers and some crazy shots, but the defense was great. You win by double digits on the road, which you win by double digits on the road in the SEC. That's a big deal to me. You just got to find ways to win in the SEC on the road, and that's what Mississippi State did at South Carolina, but pretty much dominated that second half. And now you got a team that's won back-to-back games, a team that's been good, been really good at a lot of things this year, not so much on the offensive side of the ball, but they've shown some promise there. But the defense has been great all year, and they've shown a lot of promise. They play hard. You can tell that the scheme is there by Chris Jans offensively. They just cannot make shots a lot of times. They've struggled with free throws, but I think that's starting to come around a little bit, and you're starting to see a team kind of grow a little more. The first half of the schedule look great in the first 11 games and dominate with an 11-0 start, and then you really hit a brick wall. The way that they've responded here with back-to-back wins is big. Now you're moving on to a huge game on Saturday with Missouri. I think it's going to be a massive crowd there. And to Clash On's point over in the comments, estimated on the size of the crowd, well, you're talking about baseball. Okay, never mind. We'll get to that. My estimation on the basketball crowd is a big crowd. I think that that's going to be a huge crowd, and this fan base has been dying for this team to be good. This doesn't seem like the Mississippi State fan base that we've seen for the last 10 years. This seems like the Mississippi State fan base that we saw in the late 90s and the early 2000s, a fan base that is craving a really good to great basketball team. And I think that's starting to kind of bust at the seams. When this team starts winning consistently, you're going to really see this fan base ramp up. And you have a chance here down the stretch. I've been talking about this stretch run for several weeks now. Even when Mississippi State was in that losing streak that they had, this back half of the schedule looked very, very manageable for them. And they've already won 2 of those games. I think the TCU game was huge. It was a quad 1 win. You got a win over a top 15 team. That was your third quad 1 win, which now Utah has been bumped out of the quad 1 category and they're quad 2. So that's obviously something to watch there. But the resume is actually relatively strong for Mississippi State if they can win games here. So you got 2 of them there. Now you're starting to count wins. You start racking up wins. You start to get closer and closer to the NCAA tournament. You win on Saturday against Missouri, and you got 3 straight wins, and you're looking at 15 wins now as a team. And that, the possible losses are starting to drop. That's right where you need to be. So you've got some of the most winnable games here. Missouri at home is a winnable game because it's at home. Missouri is a very tough opponent. This is going to be a very difficult game. But it's at home. I think State has a chance. LSU's been bad. Need to win that game. Arkansas and Fayetteville is always difficult. I'm going to count that as a loss. Kentucky, that is a winnable ball game. This is not the Kentucky of old. Kentucky and Ole Miss, that stretch right there is huge. You need to pick up 2 wins there. You need to pick up 2 wins with Missouri and LSU. And, if your losses are Missouri on the road, Arkansas on the road, and maybe Texas A&M at home, and you take care of business South Carolina and Vanderbilt, in my opinion, you're in the tournament. At that point, you're talking about 3 straight losses. Mississippi State has 11 losses on the year. I think that's going to be 8-10, I think, in the SEC. And I've thought all along if they could get to 8 wins in the SEC because of what they've done in the non-conference. Mississippi State's 12-1 in the non-conference. No bad losses. They have 3 really good wins in non-conference play. And then you win 8 conference games. I think the committee will put Mississippi State in. So this is a huge stretch. Every win matters for Mississippi State at this point. Can't afford to drop a lot of games here. You can drop a couple of games here and there, but you really need to win these games down the stretch. So It's big for Mississippi State here in the coming weeks to finish strong, and I think that they will. We'll see if it comes to fruition, but I think they're playing really well right now. And also moving over to football real quick, I think we'll talk a little bit about this too. Jonathan Davis, a 3-star prospect who was just outside of being a 4-star prospect, who hardly any of us knew existed. A lot of people knew about him, but a lot of us did not. Mississippi State's coaching staff knew a little bit about him in early December. Tony Hughes went with Zach Arnett in early December to visit Lawrence County to see this big defensive lineman and talk about he talked to him about the fact that, this is one of those guys that's kind of under a rock that people don't know about that might be a diamond in the rough. And Mississippi State was about to offer him, and then everything happened with Mike Leach, and it all kind of hit the back burner, rightfully so. And all of a sudden, the dust clears, and Texas comes in and offers a couple of weeks ago. Mississippi State comes in, Ole Miss comes in, and turns into a Mississippi State and Ole Miss, an old school battle between those two teams to get him. Mississippi State landed him on signing day. I think a really, really interesting ad for Mississippi State late in the process. This could be one of those guys we look at late and say, man, that was a steal for Mississippi State to be able to get that kid. Because I think I see NFL defensive linemen all over him if he can go through the process that he needs to go through, work under David Turner. David Turner's really excited about him. I see an NFL defensive lineman written all over this kid. 6'5", 300 pounds, can move, stood up and rushed the quarterback as a stand-up defensive end, almost an outside linebacker type in high school at Lawrence County. So I think that he's going to be a really good get. And then Will James, defensive back from Mobile, another kid that Mississippi State didn't necessarily need, but kind of too good to pass on. And Darcel McBath really does a good job this class getting those cornerbacks in here to build some depth and some quality depth out of his cornerbacks. So I know we got a lot of baseball questions here. We will talk about baseball. We'll talk about football, basketball, whatever you guys want to talk about. So drop your questions in if you choose. We'll start with Matthew Cunningham. Just subscribed. I appreciate that, buddy. Hopefully you'll get your money's worth, which is $0. What receiver do you think leads the team in receiving yards in 2023? I'm going to go with Freddie Roberson. I think that the ad, getting him on board out of Eastern Washington, I think he's going to be your replacement for Ra Thomas. Now, completely different offense, but he's going to be your outside threat with Justin Robinson. I think he's going to lead the team in catches and receiving yards, and could be a huge pickup for Mississippi State. I really believe that he's going to have a big season. And Chad Bumpus excited about him. Chad actually recruited him at Utah to try to get him to transfer to Utah. So they already had a previous relationship, and I think that really kind of put Mississippi State over the top. It kind of got the Bulldogs back involved with him when Chad was on board. So I love the addition of that guy in this offense because you really need another outside threat to go along with Justin Robinson after losing Ra Thomas, and I think that was a good one for the Bulldogs. I'm going to go with him as your guy that's going to lead the team in receiving. Clash on. I hope that Nate Dome may be one of the best pitchers that nobody's talking about. Yeah, I thought that was a steal for Mississippi State when they got him out of the portal because he was kind of, in a steady incline when he was transferring. He was starting to get better and better during his season last year, and the velocity was steadily going up. He's a guy that I think can really run it up there. He's showing some command early on in the fall or in the spring rather, and Mississippi State needs that. They needed a guy that's going to be overpowering. That's going to be a high 90s fastball that can get a fastball by you. I think he can throw some breaking balls for strikes, get some swing and miss. That could definitely be a guy that nobody's talking about right now that has a big season. It would not shock me in the least. I think he will be one of your back into the bullpen guys that can come in late in the game and kind of shut the door. And they need that. They need somebody to do that because they just don't have a lot of guys that can do that right now, at least that aren't proven. Clash on. This is the question that I thought you were asking earlier about basketball, but it's actually baseball. Estimate on the size of the crowd for opening pitch. The dude. I think this fan base is still really excited. Last year the team was not good, and you realize they weren't very good about middle way to the SEC season, and you still saw some huge crowds. I mean, that's one thing about Mississippi State baseball that doesn't really correlate with the rest of the sports is the fans turn out for that sport more than anybody, and I think more than any sport, rather. And I think that's because it's more like an event than it is just just sports. It's more of a social event, and everybody likes to go to these baseball games. I think that I think 10,000. It really just depends on the maybe 8,000. It really depends on the weather. If it's if it's 35 degrees and drizzling, maybe not. But I think fans are still going to be excited. If it's a nice day out, about 4 p.m. first pitch or whatever the time is, it's like 65 degrees or something. We could see 8,000 there. I don't think it'll be quite like some of those opening games last year when the team's coming off a national championship, but I still think it's going to be a good crowd. Oh, a little fluffy. Missouri was cooking last night. Yeah, they can shoot it. Their offense is good. Their offense is really good. That's going to be a good clash. State needs to make it sloppy. And these games against teams that can really shoot it and that can really score, Alabama is one of those teams, Tennessee. If you muddy up those games, that's right where you want to be. State's got to muddy up these games against those kind of teams. They don't have the scoring acumen to go out there and go tit for tat with you. There's been some times where they might go on a run back and forth, but this is an offense that can sustain a lot of success for a long period of time. So they need to make it muddy. The defense has got to make things tough on Missouri and kind of keep yourself in the game, and maybe you can kind of get over the top there offensively. But I do think State's offense is getting better. Clash Jones said after the Florida game, I almost gave up on the guys, but their fight never wavered. Yeah, that was kind of the key for me. If they could get past this stretch where they had, they had the 2 losses to Georgia and Auburn. They had the 2 losses to Tennessee and Alabama. You had the loss to Florida, and all those games were in reach late in the second half, and they just couldn't find a way. I was worried about this team's thought process from that point. Were they going to be able to stay in the fight? And the TCU game proved that they are. And that was key because, like I said, this final part of the schedule here, there's tons of games in there that are winnable. And they've had winnable games against some really good teams, but these are definitely winnable games against teams that aren't in the top half of the league or in the top, 4 or 5. So keeping the confidence and building confidence was kind of the biggest thing for this team, and I think they're getting there. I think they have a chance here. Clash On says, I think Dakota Jordan will hit double-digit home runs this year. Yeah, I don't know if I'm ready to predict that, but he's definitely got the potential. I think he's got a different swing on him. We noticed it some last year at Jackson Academy. I mean, he was breaking records at Jackson Academy and doing some huge things there in the MAIS. And, they've got some great pitching in the MAIS. I know a lot of people look down on the MAIS in private school sports in Mississippi as a whole, but in baseball, that's not really the case. I mean, in baseball, these teams can compete with anybody in the state, the ones at the top of the food chain. Jackson Prep, Jackson Academy is usually good. MRA is really good. Starkville Academy was really good this past year. Magnolia Heights, those teams are really good. And Dakota Jordan was just hitting on all cylinders last season, transferred over from Canton Academy a couple years ago, and I think really flourished at Jackson Academy in football and in baseball. And I think he's got a chance to be really good this year. I'm not ready to say Hunter Hines good as a freshman, but I think he's going to make some plays. I think he's going to make some kind of impact, whether that's all year or a few games. I don't know, but I would be shocked if he's not playing a good bit this year. Jay in Baltimore, I bet you're excited that baseball's here. I know folks are upset about the baseball ranking, but can we realistically expect anything more from a team that only has one confirmed weekend starter? No, I have no issue with the rankings. I have no issues with Mississippi State not being ranked. One of my biggest issues, though, was with D1 baseball. D1 baseball has Mississippi State's transfer class top 5 and their recruiting class top 5. Now, if you had that in any other sport, it would be very difficult to not imagine that team being in the top 25. I mean, I get what they're doing there. They like the talent, but they want to see if Mississippi State can prove it. But it's hard to have, top 5 recruiting class and transfer class, but you don't believe in the team to be top 25. But at the same time, I guess I'm kind of contradicting that too, because I think it's okay for Mississippi State not to be ranked. You just had a really bad season. I thought that season was kind of a fluke, but it happens sometimes. I mean, sometimes you just have a bad year. Baseball is such a weird sport. Baseball is a sport. I mean, we saw Ole Miss win a national title when they probably shouldn't even been in the NCAA tournament, but they got hot at the right time, and that's what it takes. Mississippi State's national championship team, they got hot at the right time. That team was good enough to win it, though, too. And not saying Ole Miss's team wasn't good enough to win it. That was kind of their expectations at the beginning of the season, was to be competing for a national title. It was just during the season they just kind of fell apart. But they recovered a little bit. Mississippi State could not recover. They just never found it. I think that injury to Landon Sims was huge, and they just could never find the pitching. This year's team, I think they've done a lot in trying to rebuild the pitching staff a little bit, and they have some guys returning that I think will be better. But just like Jay said, there's just a lot of unproven guys right now. And there's a lot of guys that are proven, but at the same time, they need to take the next step. They haven't shown it yet. So the first half of the schedule is going to be big. Mississippi State needs to establish roles in that pitching staff. I think the offense is going to be great, but you got to be able to get guys out. You're going to have to be able to limit some teams. You can't be winning games, 10-8 every week. That's just not sustainable. So State's going to have to find something from the pitching staff, and I think that they have some pieces there to do it. They just have to show us. Clash on, who's a guy who you think may turn into a top-rated guy in some of the future recruiting classes? I guess you mean like football. If you're talking football and like some of the future recruiting classes, I don't know. A lot of them are already pretty highly rated. I don't really have anybody on the top of my head for that. Oh, a little fluffy. If we could get 2 to 3 top 5 players in the state next year in recruiting, that would be massive. I agree that the recruiting class in Mississippi next year is really deep. They got a ton of guys in there that have already picked up multiple Power 5 offers, multiple SEC offers. And I think that they're going to get their fair share. It depends on who that is. I have no idea what's going on here with this person in 60779 Smith. I don't know what I guess that's spam. I don't know what that is. Let's see here. What do we got next? Clash on. I don't think the baseball team has the leadership that the great teams of years past had. I think that could be the source of some of the problems we've seen. Well, maybe last year. We don't know yet on this team. It still remains to be seen. 44 MSU, Colby Holcomb is huge. He's a big dude. They need him. They need him to step up and come up big. That's a guy that you didn't know if you were going to lose him to draft. Had such a huge year in JUCO last year, and you didn't know if he was going to make it. He really showed some good stuff. He's a guy that needs to step up. Clash on with Jonathan Davis. I think he's super fast for his size, but I think it would take him at least a few years to learn good enough pass rush moves to be a starter. Yeah, he's raw for sure. He's not a guy that comes in and immediately makes a huge difference like a Jeffrey Simmons. He's just not. He's not as polished at this point, but there's a ton of raw potential there. It's a lot like Calvin Dinkins. We saw him late in the process last year. Looked like a freak, just squatting and benching just this ungodly amount of weight, and looked great on film. But he wasn't quite ready. Needed to get in the weight room and kind of shape his body the way it needs to be. Needs to learn a little bit on the defensive line. That's the same thing here with Jonathan Davis. It's going to take a couple of years, but I think he's going to round into form, especially under David Turner. I mean, David Turner's track record with developing guys like this that have all the intangibles is second to none. Preston Smith, Chris Jones. I guess he didn't. I don't think he coached Fletcher Cox. I think that was Chris Wilson. But he recruited Fletcher Cox, and Fletcher Cox was real raw. I mean, he was a great athlete, but he had to grow into his frame and really became a monster. But he had a great career. But there's countless guys that David Turner took that were pretty raw, and he turned into really good college players, and some that he turned into really good pros. Tom T, any ideas on why Coach Arnett said he wasn't straying from the Leach offense when clearly he is? I think it's just, something that kind of puts some people's mind at ease. There's a lot of people that are like uneasy about this offensive change, which I don't understand. I mean, personally, I didn't think that Mississippi State's offense was great the last 3 years. I thought that they had a few good moments. But a change is good for this program. They needed to shift a little bit to be a little more balanced. And I think a lot of what he's saying is, there's going to be some air raid concepts in this. They're still going to be throwing the ball a little bit, and there's going to be some shots downfield, and sometimes there were some shots downfield in the air raids. I mean, you're still going to see some of those concepts, and Barbay is going to have concepts from all different kind of offenses. But they are straying pretty heavily away from the air raid, but I think what he really means is, the team is still going to have some of those same concepts. They're not going to be 3 yards in a cloud of dust rushing attack. Jay, is Connor Hijack taking any reps at second or shortstop? Sounds like he's vying for an outfield position because of his bat, but was thinking he might be an option in the infield. I don't think so. I haven't been to any scrimmages yet, but I think I'm pretty sure he's exclusively in the outfield. I could be wrong, but I haven't heard anything different. The outfield's there's definitely some competition out there, which is good. There's been times the last couple of years where you just a couple of those spots didn't have any depth, and they've got to have some options out there, and I think they do. Dakota Jordan can really swing it. Aaron Downs can swing it. It's kind of going to be, who can play the field and hit. And they have some options. So Kellen Clark's probably got a spot locked in. I would imagine Colton Ledbetter's probably got a spot locked in. So that other outfield spot's probably going to be where you have the most competition. You're looking at Hijack, Dakota Jordan, Aaron Downs. They've got some guys out there that can do some big things. It's going to be the one that performs the best. Who do you think starts the season at DH? Seems like we have 10 or 11 position players. Could be Aaron Downs. That would be my pick for it. But I don't know. That's going to be an interesting spot too. It could be. I feel like Dakota Jordan's going to be one of your better outfielders. I gotta believe he is. So I don't know how often you'll see him there. I mean, you might see Hijack at DH if he's really swinging the bat. I don't know. You can move some guys around. And that I think the first part of the schedule, that's what you're going to see. You're going to see a lot of different moving parts here and there and trying people at different spots. You got a lot of new faces out there, and you got to give some guys some playing time too. Let's see. Alan Clay, what do you think the opening day lineup will be in 15 days? That's a good question. The batting order, I'm not good enough at piecing that together right now. I just haven't seen enough of the guys. But as far as in the field, I would say Luke Hancock at catcher, Hunter Hines first base, Amani Larry second base. We'll go with Lane. I think Lane Forsythe's going to be your shortstop. I think David Mershon has a chance to push him this year, though. Slade Alford third base. We'll go Kellen Clark right field, Colton Ledbetter center. And then in left field, I'm going to go with Dakota Jordan. I think he has a shot. And that would be telling. If he's your opening day starter, that'd be telling of what Chris Lemonis thinks of him. So either Dakota Jordan or Hijack, I think. And then your DH, I'm going to go with Aaron Downs. I think that's a really good lineup. That's a really good lineup. Old Nathan, O'Doul rules. O'Doul, I have a feeling your whole family's going down. Clash on, tell Brian that he's lost his negative mindset. Has he? He's still pretty negative. How many more wins do you think we have in basketball if Molinar came back? Oh gosh, they beat Drake. Probably lose to Alabama at home, but you got a shot. If the games play out the same, you got to think. I mean, they might be. I think they win one of those Alabama games. I think they win one of those Tennessee games. The Tennessee game at home, I think they win that game. They beat Georgia. They beat Auburn. They've lost 3 games tops right now with Iverson Molinar. Just having a guy that's got the ability to create his own shot and score. I mean, I think that they've lost 3 games tops with him. If you had just one of these guys that you almost got out of the portal, that you just missed on, that are doing some big things elsewhere, you have one of those guys, you're sitting there with 3 losses, and you're probably a top 10 team. And this team got up to 15 in the country. People were really high on this team, whether they're playing defense or winning games. You're probably a top 10 team right now with just one more score. That's how close this team is. They're not that far away. They're really close. They just don't have a lot of offensive pieces. The defense is elite. The offense has too many droughts because there's not a whole lot of guys that can go through to score points. If a team takes Tolu Smith out of the game, then there's not a whole lot of opportunities for Mississippi State to make wide open three-pointers. They've tried to do that. Mississippi State probably shoots, as many good looks as you can, but they're just not hitting them. So that's the biggest thing right now, is they just do not have enough guys that can score offensively. But this team's coming. They're going to be good under Chris Jans. Lil Fluffy, do you think David Turner could bring in Kamari and Franklin? Good question. I mean, you got to get him up here first. That's the big thing. Stringer Films, I appreciate that, man. I'm impressed with every coach, especially Arnett. Coaching staff looks really good right now. I don't have any complaints about this coaching staff for Mississippi State. You got all these guys that have obviously been at Mississippi State before. They know Mississippi. Will Friend is not a Mississippi State guy, but he's very tied into the state. And then you're adding some other guys that I think are really good pieces. I think Mike Schmidt's going to be good. He's shown some really good things at his 2 stops. Kevin Barbay is still wait and see, and that's a big wait and see. We haven't seen his offense, but I like what I've heard from him and the other coaches. So far, they're saying the right things about his offense, and if it comes through that way, then I really believe that Mississippi State's got something special because I think the defense is going to be good. Kobe Walker, do you think State will make March Madness? If they do what I think they can do, if they win 8 conference games, I do. There's some people that disagree with that. Some people think you need to get to 9. I think this team's going to be good enough if they get to 8. And then you get in the SEC tournament, win a game just to solidify it. But I think if you win 8 games in the SEC play with what you've done in non-conference, I think you're in. You're 12-1 in non-conference. Your only loss is to Drake, which is not a terrible loss. You got 3 quad 1 wins, technically 2, but Utah's kind of bouncing back and forth right now. But still, that's a really good spot to be in. Just don't need any bad losses here down the stretch. You go lose to Missouri on the road, that's not a killer. You lose to Arkansas on the road, not a killer. You lose to Texas A&M or Kentucky, that's not going to just destroy you. But you need to get to 8 conference wins, I think. Alan Clay talking on Calvin Dinkins. Thought you heard me or Brian say that he might contribute some next season. Is that still true with everyone returning? It is. He's got a chance because Mississippi State lost Javon Banks, who was going to play interior on the defensive line behind Nathan Pickering. This is Nathan Pickering's year at nose tackle because you just lost Cameron Young. Nathan Pickering has a chance now to be the guy in the middle and really kind of up his stock. But you got to have that second guy, and I think you got a chance for Dinkins to do that. You need him to take a step, and he was dressing out with the team later on in the season, so he must have been doing some things right in practice if they thought he was good enough to dress out. So that's a guy I have high hopes for. I think he's got a chance to be great. I think that Travion Williams has a chance to be great, and we'll see if it comes to fruition. I think Mississippi State needs to rotate more of those young guys in this year. They didn't do a very good job of that this past year, and I think that kind of wore on that defensive line and linebackers too. So I would like to see them rotate a little more, get some really good playing time for Travion Williams, Calvin Dinkins, Deontay Anderson, Dontarie Russell, and then linebacker Javay Gilmore, Khalid Moore, Avery Sledge. Those guys need reps because you're about to lose a lot of guys in that front 6 that have played a lot of football. The younger guys have got to play because it's going to be their time. Scott Mean, what's up, Scott? Winston County. Can you see multiple freshmen in the starting lineup? I'm trying to think. I think Ross Highfield is going to be in the lineup a good bit this year, playing catcher, because I think he'll probably get a lot of midweek games. So, yeah, I could see that. I could see Dakota Jordan in there. I could see Highfield. I'm trying to think of any more. Mershawn, I think he's got a chance to play a good bit at shortstop. So, yeah, I think that's absolutely possible. Jay, plan on driving the 7+ hours to Lexington from Baltimore to see the Kentucky series, depending on weather. What is the minimum temp needed to drive 7+ hours? That's a good question. I don't know if I want to sit out there. And Lexington can get really cold. I'm going up there too for the trip. Really looking forward to it. Going up there with a couple of buddies, and we're excited about that. I've never been to Lexington. We went last year to Bardstown and Louisville, and this year we decided we're going to go to the games that weekend. I'm going to cover the games. I think Steve's going as well to cover, but me and my buddies are going to go cover the games, take some distillery tours, and kind of see some of that. And I'm excited. So we'll see you there, man. Yeah, you've already put it into existence. You've got to go now. Clash on, is the book closed on Dylan Johnson? It seems so, but it's never really closed on these transfer portal guys until they get into school. And, maybe he's enrolled. I don't know. I mean, he was just in Starkville the other day, so it's hard to know. But Washington announced him today. It's doesn't really. I don't think that they would announce him unless they knew for sure he was coming. But you never say never. But maybe that whole deal is done. I don't know. It's been a wild ride over the last month and a half. Tom T, thanks for the interview with the Georgia tight end. Yeah, I really enjoyed talking to him. He was great. Again, if you haven't seen that, go check it out. I got it on the channel. Just talked to Rylan Godey yesterday, and just a great personality, great talker. Gave me some really good stuff. I think you guys are really going to like him. Clash on. If batting is halfway clutch this year, then I could see us be a top 5 batting team in the SEC. Very well could. The lineup has a chance to be good. I really like this lineup. If Mississippi State can just be decent pitching, I think they can be really good. I thought last year's team was solid. Pitching just wasn't good. Little fluffy, yeah. It's tough sometimes to think about hypotheticals. All the hypotheticals with Mississippi State are the ones that are sad. What if Mississippi State had Cam Newton? It's always sad. Also says DJ Jeffries should stop shooting the 3. Yeah, it's getting a little excessive, isn't it? But he defends really well, plays hard. He's playing his part. Clash on, I think we need to get some more take charge players instead of so many huge 5 stars that don't have the guts for the bright lights in baseball. Yeah, I think they have a good mixture of that. I think they have guys that are your prototypical blue collar players. I think David Mershon's like that. Mershon reminds me, and I love this comp. I got this comp from our South Carolina guy, John Whittle, who's a huge baseball guy over there in South Carolina, and he works a lot with the Canes organization, baseball, not the chicken, but Canes, the baseball team. And Mershon played for that team, and he said that he reminded him of Ryan Gridley. And I love that comp. And not just, the size and stature, but the grit. He's got a little – it's maybe not so much cocky, but, he's very confident, has a little pop in his bat, plays pretty good shortstop. I think I think that lines up. I like it. Tucker, if I told you that Cade Smith is drafted in the first round of July, how does that affect how you look at the team? I think they got a chance every Friday night if that's the case. If he's a first round draft pick, then Mississippi State is lighting it up on Friday nights, and that's what they need. After Landon Sims went down, they didn't have that on Fridays. You were kind of, it was up in the air, and State needs that again. State's had some really good Friday night starters over the years. They need that to return. So Cade Smith, he very well could too. This is that third year where we've seen so many guys make that jump in year 3 for Mississippi State. This is his opportunity. He can do what Chris Stratton, Ethan Small, Dakota Hudson, those guys did. Dirty 808. We need Shaq to stay aggressive offensively. I think he can average 15 points per game. Reed has been disappointing, but he still plays hard. Ram should average at least 10 points per game. DJ pass up too many shots. Sometimes he does. Shaq has been really good the last few games. I think it started with the Tennessee game. I was going to go look at his splits. He's up to 8.9 points a game, 9 points a game, second on the team in scoring. And that's the guy that you needed another dude to step up outside Tolu Smith. And you probably need a couple more. But, yeah, here it is. So, had a good game against Georgia, or at least he scored a good bit of points against Georgia. He had 15 points, 5 of 14 shooting, but was just 3 of 8 from 3. Tennessee was really where he made his jump. He was not very good against Auburn. 3 of 10 for the field, 7 points, 0 for 5. And State played him a little more against Tennessee. He played 29 minutes, scored 20 points. I thought kept them kind of in the game in the second half in that game. He was he hit a couple of 3-pointers, was great on the line, 8 for 8 from the free throw line. And from there, you could see his confidence growing. Wasn't great against Alabama. If he hits a couple more shots against Bama, they beat Bama. That's how important he's becoming now. 12 points against Florida. TCU, he had 11 points, but it felt like he was so much bigger than that. He had 3 3-pointers, 5 assists, couple rebounds. And then South Carolina, he had a career high, 22 points, 9 of 11 from the field, had a couple of threes, didn't have a ton of bad plays. I mean, he was making the right decisions, had 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 steals. He's kind of the straw that stirs the drink because he's a little bit of an electric guy. He's the smallest guy on the floor, but he'll get in there and rebound against a 6'8" dude. So he's going to play hard. He's going to get in your face defensively. If he can get the 3-point shot going, he's a guy that can really get hot. He's a streaky shooter. So he's kind of been the difference here. And I think also on top of him, Tyler Stevenson, last 2 games, 22 points in 2 games, shooting 9 of 15 from the field off the bench. That's excellent. Gave State a lot of energy in each of the last 2 games. So you got to have an offensive spark. You got to have somebody that's going to do something. I mean, Shaq Moore, not a great 3-point shooter. He's shooting 26% from 3-point range, and you're getting 25% from DJ Jeffries. But Deshaun Davis has been kind of the surprise to me. I thought this guy was going to be you're going to be like your assist guy, ball control guy. I mean, he is he can be cold-blooded. Was good against Alabama, 14 points. Had 16 against TCU, was absolutely huge in that game down the stretch. Hit 4 3-pointers, but only 2 points in 34 minutes against South Carolina. Just didn't really take a lot of shots. 5 assists, 4 rebounds. These guys are the ones that have to really step up for Mississippi State down the stretch. We know what we're getting from Cam Matthews every single game. He's averaging 7 points a game, but is going to be your hardest worker on the floor. He's a guy that really is one of your better passers right now. I would have never thought that of a guy that is almost like a power forward, but he's playing, he can play almost like a point forward sometimes. Defends it as good as anybody, just a gritty dude. You're going to get the same thing from him every single week. Tolu Smith, for the most part, you're starting to get way more consistent play out of him. 15 points, 8 rebounds a game. A lot of people have been upset about him this year, but 15 and 8 in the SEC is strong. Just needed him to be more consistent, not have a lot of games where he kind of disappears. But for the most part, you're going to get just about what that stat line says every single game, as it all kind of adds up. So you got to get more from these other guys. Shaq Moore's got to have big nights. Deshaun Davis has got to have big nights. Those guys have got to be consistent offensively. And maybe Tyler Stevenson's one of those guys too. He's really starting to show it here in the last few games. Oh, what do we got next? Just scrolling through some of the things. We're a little behind some of the things we've already talked about. John Kay, the basketball team, seems to do better against teams out of the conference. So we could make a run in the NCAA tournament. Yeah, that's funny. And there's been some teams that they played out of conference that are better than some of these teams they've lost to in conference. Georgia. Florida is kind of looking decent right now. I wasn't all that impressed with them before they played Mississippi State, but with a win over Tennessee, that's kind of changing. The SEC is just such a tough place to play. Even when teams don't look very good, I mean, it's a tough conference. Lil Fluffy, do you think Zach Selman will be good for the students' wants and needs? I do. I think he's a guy that he understands the fan aspect of it, student aspect of it, and I think that um, he's going to do what he can on a lot of things. But I like the attitude that he has and kind of some of the ideas that I think that he can bring from another perspective is big for Mississippi State because you just don't you're used to having these guys that are kind of repeating things that's been done at Mississippi State for a long time. Now you have a guy that's coming from somewhere else. I'm interested to see how it plays out with him. Thanks, Peter. Enjoy that interview with Goody. Fluffy, if our offense is somewhat decent, what do you think? What do you see our record being next season in football? I think they can win 9 games of the regular season. I think they can get to 10 wins with a bowl game, and that would be a really, really good season for Mississippi State. I mean, you don't win 10 games around here very often. Schedule sets up solid. Alabama and LSU are both at home. I don't know if you win one or either of those games. I mean, I'm not predicting to win against Alabama for sure, but LSU, who knows? They've been far more competitive against LSU in recent years, so that's a possibility. You get Kentucky at home. You get Ole Miss at home. Auburn and Arkansas are on the road, so that's going to be a challenge. I think Auburn's going to be much better, I would think. Arkansas is always tough to win there. So I still think the schedule's good, though. I think State's got a chance to pick up some wins. Kobe Walker, who do you think will be the pitching rotation? I think that it's going to be I think we're going to have probably Cade Smith on Friday nights. I think Landon Gartman probably on Saturday. And I'm leaning towards Drangelo Sanjay pitching on the weekends too. That's kind of going out on the limb a little bit, but not really. I think people are really high on this kid, but they keep throwing him out there in these scrimmages as a starter. I got to think that he's going to be a starter. And the command that he has from both sides is crazy to me. I think that he's going to start. Whether that's on Saturday or Sunday, I don't know. But I feel really confident that Cade Smith and Landon Gartman have spots locked down. We'll see if that turns out to be true. But that's just how I feel right now. Dirty, what happened to our Lady Dogs? Internal issues, and do you see us bouncing back versus Tennessee? I don't know. It's still early. You know, you got a first-year coach that's kind of figuring things out, and the whole team is and most of the team's new. And a lot of these players are role players from somewhere else that some of them didn't play that much, or they're just role players. You don't have a lot of alpha dogs out there. I think he deserves to have Sam Purcell, that is. He deserves to have a chance to recruit his players, get his players in here, and see what they can do. And he's going to make some adjustments to his coaching style. I'm not entirely worried about the program right now, but we'll see where they go. They need to win some games here down the stretch to make postseason. And we'll see against Tennessee. Tennessee beat Ole Miss tonight. That's a team that is dangerous. They got a lot of talent. But, you know, they haven't beaten a lot of great teams, but they've got a lot of size. They got some scoring, some rebounding. They killed Mississippi State on the offensive boards at Tennessee. State had a chance in that game in the fourth quarter and just couldn't get a defensive rebound. Tennessee was just killing them on second chance points. So State's going to have to play well. I'm hearing that Danae Carter is going to be back for that game, so that'll be a huge return. She hadn't played in a few weeks, so she's going to probably be a little rusty. But it's big to get her back because she's one of those players that's going to fight to the bitter end. Clash on, what do you think the odds are of Rylan Goody be north of the halfway mark as far as tight ends go? What does that mean? You'll have to rephrase that, or maybe it's just going over my head. I don't know what that means. Little Fluffy, our recruiting in basketball has been kind of disappointing. I think that you'll change your mind when you see some of those guys. I really do. The JUCO guys are legit, and you just have to trust Chris Jans on that and trust me and trust everybody that's followed those guys. Trey Fort and Jaquan Scott are going to help Mississippi State tremendously next year. And I like what I'm seeing from Adrian Myers, too. I think that class is going to look a lot better to you when they get on the floor. And they're going to be big pieces of next year's team. And then you're going to have to go to the portal and get some guys, too. And you're talking about the roster is going to have an overhaul next year. We're not going to see a lot of the same faces out there. And that's what is kind of weird to project for Mississippi State next year because you're going to have a lot of different guys, but that is what it is. Chris Jans said when he made that opening press conference, he was going to have a lot of roster turnover. He was probably going to have to build a roster every year, and that's just kind of the state of the game at this point. But if he's getting the right guys, that works. I like the two JUCO guys. I think Trey Fort is one of the best scorers in the country in junior college. I talked to David Sanders the other day, former Ole Miss player. He's the coach at Colin, and he coached Trey Fort last year at Colin. And he told me that Fort is a pro. The way that he scores the basketball could be done in the NBA right now. There's a few things that he has to do a little better, defensive end, and, Chris Jans is going to make sure he does that. So, but he said, this kid works his butt off, works really, really hard, is in the gym all the time, a gym rat. I think you're going to like this class. Right now, it doesn't look good. And one of the reasons is our guys at 247, I don't think they evaluate JUCO guys or rank JUCO guys, which I think is a very big mistake. I think you still need to rank those guys. There's some great players in junior college. So it gives a look of, these guys aren't any good. But in reality, I think Mississippi State's added some really good players. And we'll see if it fits. What's up, Jess? I got excited there for a second, Jess. I thought Kayla was in here, and we had a lady in here for a little bit, but wasn't to be. You're just logged into her account. Clash on. Everybody acts like Tolu Smith is so great, but he misses a lot of easy shots. He does sometimes. He is inconsistent. He's been inconsistent, but he's also a guy that can go out and just dominate a ball game on any given night. I mean, there's some times where he comes out and, it's like the TCU game. I mean, he was just not going to be stopped. He could have scored 30 plus. So he's got the potential. He's just got to finish a lot of those plays. Tucker Lamonis keeps talking about how Drangelo needs more work than everyone else. Seems like he's going to have to start either Sunday or midweek. Yeah, that's a very interesting case. We haven't really seen this before. There's been guys out there that have pitched with both arms, but we have very little to go on to know kind of what to do. I don't know if these coaches have ever worked with a guy that can throw with both arms. It's going to be kind of new for everybody, but I don't think he's a guy that you bring in for, a couple of batters. I think he's one of those that you want to kind of get warmed up and get rolling because he's a player that he could be a guy that, first couple innings, he gets to the first couple innings, starts to get a feel, and he gets in a groove. That's going to be tough, man. That's going to be really tough to hit. You're going to have a chart on everything, every weakness that a hitter has. And you have a guy that can manipulate every hitter he faces and find some kind of weakness and use it against them. Because he can throw high 80s, low 90s from the left side and locate. He can throw mid 90s from the right side. He's got a breaking ball. He's got he's got a change up. He's got some off speed pitches. So you see a guy that, hey, he can't hit right-handers. Okay, you switch to the right side. This guy, he can't hit the slider, from the right side. I mean, it's going to be very difficult for when this guy's really grooving. I mean, you have a superstar right here, I think. So, it's going to take some time, and it would be foolish to just go ahead and say this guy's going to be all SEC, all American freshman year, whatever. He's going to have to adjust. There's going to be some moments this year where he's not overpowering somebody or anything like that, but he's been impressive so far. If he ever gets to the point where he is in his groove, in his bag, so to speak, this guy's going to be just an absolute nightmare because we just don't have enough of these guys out there that can do anything. And he's starting to get better and better at doing every little thing. So you got a chart that in this day and age, when you have the analytics, you got a chart that says what every player's weakness is. He's going to be the one to exploit it. And I think the best way to do that is have him start ball games. I think that's going to happen. 44 said long relief's possibility as well, talking about Drangelo. I think that's definitely a possibility. That might be a way to start him off, to kind of get him. It's not as much pressure maybe coming in long relief. That could be the case. Fluffy, that's who we're talking about is Drangelo. They just call him Lou. 44, Marks and Price will be top 5 backfield. Should be a good backfield, I think. I think Jeffrey Pittman's going to surprise some people too. State's got a solid group. Is one of those things like, there were some hand-wringing about Dylan Johnson, and I think he makes your backfield really, really good if he would have come back. But it was just a luxury because now you got Marks, Price, Jeffrey Pittman, Seth Davis possibly. You got a lot of different backs there and a lot of guys that you can just churn in and out. You can use in different ways. You can use one guy as an up back, as a blocker. You can use 2-back sets. They'll run the pistol. They'll run the diamond. There's a lot of possibilities with this backfield. And that's the interesting thing about it is Mississippi State ran the air raid where you don't really think about the running backs that much, but they have a nice collection of running backs. Mike Leach did a good job of keeping this team in really good shape, with the exception of the tight end, obviously. The skilled players are in really good shape for this offense, and I think the offensive line too. I still think the offensive line has a chance to be good. Alan, can Drangelo swap arms to the same hitter, or does he have to commit? He has to commit before the batter, before the plate appearance. He has to say he's going to throw from the right side or the left side. And the batter's got to commit too, I believe, before that first pitch. If you have a switch hitter, he's got to pick what side of the plate he's going to be on. There was a thing in spring training a few years ago where you had a switch pitcher versus switch hitter, and before that bat, they were going back and forth. I think you have to commit, and maybe it's the hitter that does. I'm not sure how the rules work. Somebody can correct me, but they've made some rules there, but it's not going to be a back and forth thing where they're changing the glove and moving the sides of the plate. But you do have to – he's got to spend the entire at-bat pitching from one side. Same thing with a switch hitter. You got to do the same thing. Clash on think we'll go after a big man at the portal in basketball. Probably so. I think the staff's going to continue to recruit big guys. And I think you need that. I think a big man is still important in basketball. I don't think, 2 big men in there at the same time is all that important anymore. You're really starting to stretch the floor more now and have a lot of those stretch fours that can play outside in. So it's really not a good idea, in my opinion, to run with 2 big men now. But having some depth there is important. I think it's still important to have a true big. Teams that still have those guys are still really good. 44, how many yards do you think Price and Marks will combine for? I think they're going to be over 1,200 yards at least, maybe 15. They're going to run the football a lot more this year. Marks is going to have a chance, I think, to get to 1,000. If that's the case, I think Price is probably over 500 at least. It's going to look a lot different. Clash on, do you think Godey will be a top 6 tight end in the SEC? It's still too early for that. He hasn't caught a pass, I don't think, in college yet. So this is going to be, that first catch is going to be, I think, his first. So it's hard to predict that, but he's definitely going to have way more opportunities here than he had at Georgia. think Trey Fort will be the best of them all after watching this film. Yeah, absolutely. I really like that kid. He's been outstanding this year. Little Fluffy, I really like the direction of all three major sports Mississippi State's going. Yeah, they're in a good spot right now. If baseball gets back on track this year, they'll be in a really good spot. Do you see State getting 44? Do you see State getting more coverage sacks with a potential solid secondary? Very well could. I'm interested to see the differences between long-term differences between Matt Brock and Zach Arnett. And Zach kind of touched on this a little bit on Wednesday. He was a lot more. I don't know if conservative is not really the word, because I thought that Brock was still aggressive, but he didn't call a whole lot of zero coverage and all that stuff like Arnett. All out blitz like Arnett might do. It was a very disciplined, and I think that Arnett's defense has been disciplined too. But the defense as a whole just looked really, really disciplined under Brock. Everybody got home. There wasn't a whole lot of situations where you have guys, on an island out there. So very well could. I think the secondary has a chance to be good. You got a few question marks back there as far as experience that has to be ironed out. You got some corners that haven't played, some safeties that haven't played. So there's still some things to go over, but they got a chance to be good. Who do you think will be cornerback 1 and cornerback 2 next year from Little Fluffy? Obviously, Decameron Richardson. And then from there, you got several options. Size Furge is back, played a lot of snaps. Kamari Rogers is going to have every opportunity. I think Marcus Banks might move to safety, and he should have one of those starting safety spots. DeCarlos Nicholson has a chance. I'm going to go with Kamari Rogers. I'm really high on him. I think Isaac Smith will be a day one starter. What do you think? Yeah, it's tough to come to the SEC and start right away, but he's got all the makings, and it's wide open in the safety group. I think the biggest thing for him is he's able to come in here right away and play as a freshman in the spring. That's the biggest thing. Get that out of the way, and then compete for a starting job in the fall. Definitely got a shot. But all right, guys, this has been a great chat. 1 hour. Wow, I didn't know if we'd have enough people in here. Appreciate you guys for checking in. Enjoyed it. Another great talk. We'll do it again next week, probably. We're getting closer and closer to baseball season. That's a couple of weeks away. So, of course, we'll be covering that in full as we get going. So make sure you guys are hanging around for that. Make sure you're over on 247 checking us out there. Again, if you haven't subscribed here, subscribe, please. But I appreciate you guys as always. All right, I'm logging off for the night. I hope you guys have a great rest of the week, and we'll catch you down the road.